Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's good to see you all out here on a Saturday. I'm Karen Christensen. I'm a Global Vice President here at Whole Foods Market, and I'm also a member of the board of the Whole Planet Foundation. So I'm just going to talk for maybe 45 to 60 seconds. A little bit about the Whole Planet Foundation. I'm sure that you know that our sole purpose is to provide microcredit to the poorest of the poor. And it's really a wonderful organization. I've been on the board for just a little bit more than a year, but I've been working at Whole Foods for 20 years. So I've had a lot of exposure to the Whole Planet Foundation during that time. And it's been just a tremendous morale booster and a tool for engagement with our team members, and a really meaningful way for us to make an impact that's positive on the world. You know probably that we source products from around the world, and the Whole Planet Foundation, one of the tenets that we work with is that we're always providing microfinance in areas where we are sourcing products, so that we're making a real direct connection back to the places where we are doing business. So that's something that we're very proud of and very excited about. Also, you may or may not know that since the Whole Planet Foundation was founded back in 2005, we've reached now more than 700,000 individual entrepreneurs. So we're able to impact them, their families, their communities. We're tremendously proud of that. Wanted to share with you a little bit about my experience as a team member. I had an opportunity to go on a Whole Planet Foundation volunteer trip, which is something we do every year for our team members, where we put together usually a 2-week trip to one of the areas, again, where we're sourcing product and we are providing microfinance. And it's really a wonderful experience. We have team members that come from every level within the company, from cashiers to regional leaders to global leaders to people on the executive team. So it's wonderful. We have a really fantastic time to travel together, to bond together, to volunteer together. We do volunteer projects when we go on these trips, and then we also have opportunity to meet with microfinance partners and meet with the actual microfinance recipients. So that's really a wonderful way for us to tangibly connect our team members to the work that we're doing through the foundation and through Whole Foods Market. For me, I feel extremely privileged to be here today. I'm so thankful that we have the Whole Planet Foundation here at Whole Foods Market. I'm so grateful that we have the opportunity as team members at Whole Foods Market to participate in this way, that we can really make a tangible, meaningful connection with people around the world through this foundation. And I have been out there and I've seen it, and it's really real that we're providing direct access to microcredit to people who really need it. So thank you so much, Joy, for inviting me to be here this morning. And I'm super excited to introduce Sara.
Thank you.
Yes, the mic is yours.
I think I'm live.
Actually, I'll take the mic.
All right. That sounds like a dream job. That's amazing. So I'm Sara Brand. I'm the founding general partner of True Wealth Ventures. That's a local Austin-based venture capital firm, and we're investing in women-led companies. We're defining that as at least one woman is on that founding early stage executive team, and we're investing in the markets of sustainable consumer and consumer health. And by the nature of my talk, you'll understand a little bit more why. But basically companies, products, technologies, businesses that are improving environmental and human health. And I was hoping that this was an engaging or captivating type of title in terms of women entrepreneurs and investors. Are they the solutions to the world's problems? And I think that they are, and so I'll explain with a lot of data why. And I didn't think this just maybe a handful of years ago, but it's really through my experience starting and running this venture capital fund that I've really gotten to the point where I literally think that women entrepreneurs and investors are going to be the catalyst for solving a lot of the world's issues. And so let me just start with a little context of why I'm focusing on entrepreneurs and and really kind of zoning in on venture capital in particular during this talk. First, it's my world. I'm running a venture capital fund. Before my last role, I was in venture capital out in the Bay Area. And so it's an area that I know, and it's also pretty broken. And then, entrepreneurship. It's the backbone of the U.S. economy. The Small Business Association has shown that over the last decade, 65% of all new job creation is due to, small businesses. And if you look at who's funding those small businesses, there's lots of microloans and microcredit and other kinds of business loans, friends and family, angel investors, et cetera. But if you look at the magnitude of the dollars of what, as an economy, we're really putting the majority of the capital towards, venture capital is a big portion of that in terms of the real money that's really scaling these small businesses and launching them into the market and disrupting industries. So I'm using that as a proxy, this venture capital entrepreneurship ecosystem, as what we value as an economy in terms of the innovation kind of cycle. So with that as context, hopefully we can agree that's a decent proxy for the discussion today in terms of what we're valuing in investing in for the next solutions, the next innovations and technologies. So with that as the proxy, what are we missing from this innovation economy? And if you look at just last year, the venture capital dollars geographically in this country, 75%, a little over 75% went to 3 states, California, New York, and Massachusetts with Boston. And so 75% is going to basically 3 cities or regions in the country. And then if you double click on where those dollars are going within those pretty dense regions, it's largely going to male entrepreneurs, and I'll get into some of those numbers. But if you kind of double click on who are those male entrepreneurs who are getting the money, you probably have a vision in your head of the skinny jeans guy in the hoodie in his early 30s or whatever from the HBO show Silicon Valley, or Mark Zuckerberg or whatever. And it's largely true. And of course there are exceptions, but if you really look at the venture capital industry, it's very insular. And it's because there's not a lot of new jobs. It's not like you can just go get a role in venture capital. You have to have, been working with a bunch of folks. You have to have a lot of money yourself. There aren't jobs that open up like, oh, we're going to hire for a new partner position in this venture capital fund. And so it's a lot of men who have been working together over a long time frame, come from investment banking or management consulting primarily. They have worked together for a long time. They've gone to the same business schools. They've gone to the same country clubs. Their families know each other, et cetera, et cetera. And there's no blame there. It makes tons of sense, because the whole venture capital strategy is to reduce your risk. You're investing other people's money in really early stage companies. So you're trying to reduce your risk however you can. And if you're working with people that you have worked with before, or that remind you of yourself, you're comfortable with, they've gone to the same school, that your family knows them, you can do easy reference checks, whatever it is, that reduces your risk. And similarly, if you're investing in markets and problems that you understand, that you're exposed to, that also reduces your risk. You know that there's a problem, you know there's a market there, you've done another investment in a company similarly, whatever it is. So that's the name of the game, is to reduce your risk, and so it ends up being extremely insular. And we get things like the Juicero, which I thought this was a good example, since we're at Whole Foods today, of literally an appliance that squeezes either cut fruit or vegetables into a glass, and $400 million was raised in venture capital financing before this company went bankrupt. This is not rocket science. This is literally squeezing, cut fruit and vegetables in a pouch. And if you think about what the whole Planet Foundation could do with $400 million in terms of innovating and improving the food ecosystem, but this literally just blew up into nothing. And I like to think it's because the people on the front lines of making a lot of these investment decisions and solving the problems are very again, insular, but just they're exposed to a certain problem set. They're similar types of people who have similar lifestyles, and so they're familiar with similar problems. There's a whole huge problem space outside of what this ecosystem is looking at that is on the front lines of what I could argue are more critical environmental and human health issues in this world. And so they have an advantaged position in understanding, what those problems are and therefore what the best solutions are. And so, who can fix this? I probably gave my answer away. But I think women entrepreneurs have a really advantaged position to fix this. And then I actually think it's women investors who can invest in these women entrepreneurs, but that's part B. So for women entrepreneurs, women are on the front lines of a lot of these issues. They are making 85% of all consumer purchase decisions, and they're making 80% of all healthcare decisions, for themselves, for their children, often for their aging parents and the parents-in-law, often for their spouses, for their community. There's usually, somebody you kind of go to in your community that's on, the bleeding edge of the latest health stuff, and it's usually women. And it's the largest part of our GDP. So they have an advantaged position in just understanding what's available and, and making those decisions. Oh, I think this is an old deck. Well, I think they had two other slides, which is basically they're also starting businesses. They are starting these businesses at 2x the rate of men. So they are creating these solutions. And I also had a slide which is just the state of Texas and showing how great Texas is. Texas has gained 2% of venture capital dollars, by the way. And then women are getting 2% of that 2%. But Texas is a really, really powerful place for women entrepreneurs. We're the #2 state in the country for the growth of women-led businesses, and Austin's the #1 city for startup activity in general, is rated by the Kauffman Foundation the last 2 of 3 years. And then there's some other great stats that I can't remember, but they were on the slide. But anyway, for the other cities like San Antonio and Dallas and Houston, we're really a powerhouse for women. And I think when you look at the history of Texas women, it makes sense why we're such a great state for women entrepreneurs. But jumping ahead, there are better financial outcomes when there are more women in leadership positions, from the Fortune 500 down to the venture capital-backed startups. But I chose 2 quotes just to talk about women leaders in venture capital-backed companies and how they outperform financially. So this is from First Round Capital, which is probably the most prolific investor in early stage, seed stage, venture capital-backed companies. And they went back with 10 years of investing to just kind of mine their data and see what they could find without any particular agenda. And their #1 finding was that the companies with a female founder performed 63% better than their all-male founded companies, which are the vast majority of companies, by the way. I think the latest numbers from last year, 83% of all venture capital-backed companies didn't have a single woman on the management team. So this is significant. And then Illuminate Ventures is a Bay Area venture capital firm, and they did a bunch of work, some of the first work in this area, and they found that the average company run by a woman had achieved comparable earlier revenues, but using a third less capital. So not only are there better returns, but these companies are much more capital efficient. So you'd think that VCs would see this data, be trying to improve their returns for their investors and be all over this, but there's actually this massive disconnect. Less than 3% of all VC-backed companies are women-led, have a woman CEO. The latest numbers from PitchBook, if you're looking at the dollars, it's like 2.7% of the numbers. Sorry, and if you're looking at dollars, it's like 2.19%, so less than 3. Anyway, we don't have to argue about that. It's like in the low single digits. It's really an opportunity. So who can fix this? I really think it is women investors from my own experience and because some of the data. Well, let me kind of back up first and say, I think there's a lot that can be done just by having a shift in our perception of that women can do with shifting their perception and seeing themselves as investors. Everybody in this room is an investor. You don't have to be in venture capital or a money market manager or mutual fund manager or something like that. Every woman in here is an investor, and from starting from the micro investments back to this same thing. Women are making 85% of all consumer purchase decisions. So deciding to shop at Whole Foods or H-E-B, or what they buy downstairs, or online or whatever. 85% of all consumer purchase decisions. So women really are making investments every single day with every dollar of deciding what products they're going to back, and therefore what companies and what leadership teams. And same thing with healthcare decisions. This is the largest portion of our GDP and growing quicker than we want it to, and so there's significant money that's moved and markets that are moved from all of these smaller investments every day. But then if you look at the macro scale, women are literally the next global economy. Right now, women control about 40% of all U.S. investable assets, but that's projected to go up to 2/3 of all U.S. investable assets in the next 12 years. It's the largest shift of wealth that the world's ever seen. And so that's another huge portion. Again, I think that there's a lot of women who don't think about their 401ks that are just, in the moderately aggressive portfolio or whatever, and double click and look at what companies they're backing or what their wealth manager's really doing. There's a lot of markets that are moving based on women's investment decisions that I think can become a lot more conscious. So again, getting back into the venture capital world, there's a huge disconnect in terms of women making the investment decisions in venture capital. If you look at who are the partners in these venture capital firms, it's in the mid single digits to high single digits are women. But if you look at who those partners are, it's very much, it's mostly general counsels or CFOs or COOs. But if you really estimate who are the women who are actually leading investment decisions, choosing what companies to invest in, and then getting on those boards and negotiating the deals, it's estimated to be 1% are women. And it's real. If you look at kind of this chicken and egg issue, I think of 1% of investment decision makers in VC funds are women. 2.19% of the VC-backed companies are women-led. I think it really is a chicken issue in terms of the venture capital firms with women partners are twice as likely to invest in a company with a woman founder, 3 times more likely to invest with a company that has a woman CEO. And so it really is important to have more women investment decision makers at the table to get those investments into the women leaders. And these are for firms that don't have a proactive gender diversity strategy. This is just like natural human behavior. And when women VCs invest in women-led companies, those companies perform better. And they don't know why. A lot of this stuff, like, I don't know why this is, I just go on the data. But there's some magic that happens because there's a 32.1% greater chance of an exit when a woman VC invests in a women-led company. Which part? Oh, so as venture capitalists, you invest in a company and they grow, and then you get your money back by an exit, which usually means they're acquired by another company in an acquisition. It can mean they also go IPO. That's what everyone likes to talk about, but that actually is quite rare that you take the company public. You're welcome. And thank you for catching me on my lingo. Really good news is that even though the VC numbers are kind of going in the wrong direction, actually the amount of partners in venture capital firms that were women were in the low double digits in 1999, 2000, and it's gone down. But there's a lot of improvement happening when you look at women taking a more active role in their investments as angels. So angels mean women who are personally investing in startups. So not through a venture capital firm, but it can mean, friends and family, and you've got your friend who's starting a company and you invest, but it can also mean that you're in the Central Texas Angel Network, which is our local chapter, which is actually the most active angel chapter in the country. It's tied with a couple others sometimes, but it's really, we're very lucky to be in Austin. If you're thinking about starting a company, there's a lot of angel investors here. And the percent of women angel investors has gone up over the last, whatever that is, more than a decade. And now we're at 22%. This is the latest numbers from the Angel Capital Association. But what's more important is that women care. These are the numbers based on these women angels that are part of the Angel Capital Association. Women care 10 times more about funding female founders. 51% versus 6%. And women say the social impact of the businesses they invest in are 2 times more important than men. This is consistent with a lot of other studies. So women want the great financial returns, but if they can get great financial returns, they want more. They want to make sure that those leadership teams are the kinds of leadership teams they want to back, and they want to make sure that the impacts that those companies make are positive ones. And when I look at our own investors and our limited partners in the True Wealth Ventures venture capital fund that I managing, 80%, more than 80% of our investors are women, and this is unprecedented. So these are either single women or women from a family office or a couple or foundation that led the investment decision. And we were in the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and a number of national publications about this, just because it's really unprecedented and very encouraging given some of the the numbers I showed. And the real sort of icing on the cake or cherry on whatever is that the gender dividend. So, and this gets back to the Whole Planet Foundation too, and the why investing in women entrepreneurs, whether they're the basket weavers or they're the CEO of venture capital backed startup, is that when those women come into increased wealth, no matter what level of wealth they're at, they reinvest 80% of that increased wealth back into their communities, into their families, into their health, their education. And so it's the most effective and efficient way to build up a community. And so I saw there's some Pappers cards out there, so I didn't realize I was doing an advertisement for them, but you can get one of these out on the patio. But the Dalai Lama said that Western women are going to save the world. And now I think I understand what he means in terms of the wealth that we're coming into and the investment decisions that we're making, from these day-to-day purchases to the funds or the large cap companies that we're deciding to back, to how we're raising our children and the next leaders of the country. And so I think that this next decade, or 12 years, is going to be a major tipping point in transition where women are going to come into consciousness about how much they influence the markets and the products and the leadership teams that we're backing. And I think we are going to see a much better world for it. Maybe I'll leave this slide up.
Q&A for Sara. Have a microphone. Who would like to ask Sara a question? All right, over here.
Is it possible to make choices on our 401k for women investors?
Increasingly, yes.
Is there a guideline? I'd like to do that.
Right. Increasingly, it's much harder in public companies to get into impact investing in general, which is what we're a GIN certified impact investment fund because of our gender lens, and also because we're investing in companies improving environmental and human health. But in public companies, there's increasing screens like State Street that sponsored what's it called? The girl, looking at the bowl, the Fearless Girl. Thank you. They've done a really good job, and so has Blackstone and a few others, of not voting for a company's board unless there are 3 women, I think, on the board. Maybe it started as at least they had to have 1, and now I think it's 3. Anyway, so they've looked at, you know, the gender diversity of the board, but now they're getting much deeper and really looking at not just the leadership teams and the, you know, executives in the company, but the whole pipeline and the employee base, and really there's better and better metrics. There's still a long way to go, but one of the greatest things you can do is ask your 401k managers or wealth advisors, I want to invest in gender diverse teams, and I want to move my portfolio, and get them on their toes figuring it out for you.
Great question. Great answer. Who's next? Okay. Oh, this is my boss.
Oh.
Everyone, this is the president and executive director of Whole Planet Foundation, Philip Sansoni.
Oh.
Thank you, Joy. But Whole Planet Foundation is run by a lot of women, just like Joy, and all over the world. 2.7 million loans have been made, and about 87% to women. And this wasn't my question. Just get me off on something. But they are true entrepreneurs, and we found this over and over again, that women make terrific entrepreneurs, and you don't have to tell them what to invest in. They already know. Just give them the capital, and they're off and running. 97% repayment rate.
Yep.
My question is, does True Wealth take investors in at what level is entry level to invest in True Wealth?
So the fund is closed now, so we're deploying the capital, but we will raise a second fund probably in 2020. The minimum investment for Fund 1 was $250,000. We've got some limitations very much from the SEC that allows us to only take accredited investors and only take up to 99 investors, and that's to protect, you know, well, we don't need to get into the SEC regulations. But anyway, that's why the minimum had to be what it was. We couldn't take investors at, you know, 25,000. But what we did, which I think is, again, I haven't heard of another fund doing this, and I think it helped us get to this 80%, you know, plus of women investors, is all funds have capital calls primarily. So you don't need all the money up front. You're investing in, you know, we're investing in about 12 companies over 4 years, and our first investments are $250,000 to $500,000 into these companies, and then we use 2/3 of the investment capital for follow-on financing. So you need, you know, money over many years, and so we call that capital, the $250,000 minimum investment. We called in up to $50,000 annual capital calls. So you know, spreading that out, being something that was easier to plan for. And so I think that really was helpful for people who hadn't invested in venture capital before, and it was, you know, a little bit more doable for some.
Okay, here we go. Thanks, Sarah.
Hi, thank you for this. This is a great presentation. I run the Chobani Incubator, and over 60% of the companies we support and invest in are female founded as well. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. Those stats are incredible and unheard of in venture capital. Yep. One of our portfolio companies is here. Kelly's the co-founder of Wild Way, which is a Texas-based company. Awesome, you should check them out.
I love their granola.
Yeah,
yes.
Good, right? My question for you is, you know, those stats are amazing. I think it's incredible. Can you tell us a time or give us an example of a female founder that you met with, that what was their pitch or their story that, you know, something about maybe their perspective or that kind of diversity on their team tipped the balance for you and your partners, and how did they phrase it, or how did they pitch it that made a difference for you?
So I have so many good examples, but our first investment was in a company called Unaliware, and I'll use that because they're Austin-based. Jean Ann Booth is the CEO here, and she basically came out of retirement to build this company for her mom. So it's a smartwatch for seniors. It prevents against wandering, does medication reminders, fall detection. It's all speech activated, so it talks to you, you talk to it. You never take it off. The batteries are integrated into the band, and you replace the, you know, if the battery goes dead, you've got charged batteries that you clip into the band. So it never is taken off, because 50% of falls happen overnight or in the bathroom where your Apple Watch is charging, or, you know, you've taken your I've fallen out, I can't get up device, pendant off because it's not waterproof. So there's modern technology has not kept up at all. It's 1987 was the I've fallen out, I can't get up button. That's still like state of the art in this industry. So her track record, I know it's funny, but it's not. Her track record was she sold her last company to Texas Instruments and her company before that to Apple. So she was literally out doing working on a dive boat in retirement, and her mom needed something. And so she looked at, her mom wouldn't wear any of the devices. Her mom had been a model. And so she's just like, no way. It's totally stigmatizing. It's ugly. It's also largely ineffective for when most falls happen. So she designed this basically for her mom. She obviously knows how to make and design and exit these great semiconductor kind of device companies. And her insight into the buyers of these watches, which are mainly adult daughters and daughters-in-law, 80%. There was a great New York Times article. 80% of well, it's more than that a little bit, but the biggest portion of the care for our aging population is daughters and daughters-in-law in the United States. So you can imagine it's even higher in other countries. But her insight into the buyers and her insight into the wares is what I think allows this company to transform the state of the art in this industry because of that insight, and who's in that market today are not women leaders.
Love these questions and answers. Anyone else?
UNALIWEAR.
Could you talk about your process of raising capital? And the challenges faced as women doing something different.
It's very long and painful. At first, I thought it was just going to take forever, and it's just not very hard, but it just takes a long time because you can't market. You can't say, hey, we've got this fund, and this is the minimum investment. Now, you can't ever market to non-accredited investors, and so you have to qualify every conversation you have where you actually talk about the investment offering. And so it's extremely inefficient, meaning you have to have like coffee with somebody and then they introduce you to somebody else that you have coffee with, and it's that kind of process. But after we got farther into it, realized it's not just a lot of time, it's actually really hard because you have to have a reason for somebody to commit now versus wait until the fund's going to close so you can start investing and get that momentum. And so we were able to do our first close by applying for this grant through the Economic Development Administration. So it was a part of their regional innovation strategies from the Department of Commerce. And they were giving out 8 grants across the country to areas that were underdeveloped regionally, realizing that the way VC funds start are they're established big VC funds in a community, and then a couple partners leave and start a new fund, and spin out. But in areas where there aren't established VC funds, there's no one to spin out from, and so it was mainly a regional strategy. But we applied with our region being women and won. And so it was a really good motivator to say, hey, first close investors, we need to show that we have, matching dollars and support in order to get $250,000 of government money to start the fund, and which is great for the investors, since they don't have to, have their money applied towards that. So anyway, it's little tricks like that or not tricks, but of actually creating real-ish deadlines and motivators to get those investments, and most investors still come in at the very end, which is just really fun, emotional roller coaster. But there's a longer conversation, I guess. But we did find that it really resonated with women. And so what we ended up doing, our first close was like 50-50 men and women, but then the women would open their Rolodexes and tell the other women that they knew that had the capacity to invest about it, and hosted, wine at their home for us to tell all their friends that they thought would be interested about it. And so it just snowballed. And so then we started doing the similar thing of having these sessions for women to talk about how does venture capital work, and what are the capital calls like, and what's an exit, and blah blah blah. So I think that the kind of education and having a focus was a real advantage as well, because it wasn't just another B2B, SaaS software VC fund. Not saying anything bad about that, but just different.
It looks like this lovely lady might be the last question of the session.
Oh, thank you. So is this your first fund? How big is the fund? And what is the percentage that you invest in healthcare versus other things?
So I was in venture capital previously, and so was my partner, but this is our first fund together. So this is True Wealth Ventures Fund 1. And it's $20 million, and we're investing in a portfolio of sustainable consumer and consumer health, because we think women leaders, gender diverse teams have advantages of understanding the issues in those markets more, being 85% of consumer purchasers, 80% of the healthcare decision makers. And so our portfolio is going to be across that, and maybe just a minute on what that means. So we're looking at 90% of home purchase and remodel decisions are driven by women. And so we're looking at more sustainable building materials and smart windows and eco-efficiency for like energy efficiency or Nest type thermostats, smart building IoT kinds of technologies, to all household goods that could be made more sustainably, from furniture to fashion to all care products to food, which is a huge share of wallet for home purchases. And a lot of what we're looking at is more of the technology, material science, and more science-based protectable IP behind getting those more sustainable products to market. So it could be, ag tech or agriculture technology or, packaging. My PhD is in more material science, mechanical engineering, actually focused in green design and manufacturing. And maybe let me put one more plug in for women in STEM and engineers. I'm on the board of the Cockrell School of Engineering. That's the UT Engineering School, and that's where I got my undergrad. And then I went to Berkeley for my master's and PhD, and I'm on that board too. And they are some of the 2 top public engineering schools that award the most engineering degrees to women. And how we've shown, or how we've done that successfully over time, is to talk about the positive impacts of what those women can do. They don't care about the starting salary or that kind of thing. They want to know, see role models and see people that have made big environmental improvements or healthcare improvements. That's what really motivates them, which is another reason why we have the investment strategy we do, because we think more women will be starting companies in this space or joining companies in this space. And then in the healthcare sector that we invest in, we're looking at all things healthcare, and like healthcare versus sick care, basically, is how we talk about it. So it's not going to be some heavy FDA regulated medical device that your surgeon implants during surgery, or some pharma drug you have to take, but it's really staying well. And that's where women, again, are making most of those investment decisions. So it's not going to be an enterprise health thing where the consumer or the patient doesn't actually influence whether that hospital or doctor or system purchases that, but wherever there's a patient consumer influence, that's what we're investing in. Yeah.
Well, I'm really impressed. And I knew a lot about Sara before she came to speak with us. So I have a couple of shout outs. One is, your mom is here.
That's my mom.
That was really nice. And in every session when I get a chance to do this, I really want to appreciate Sandy, Jeannie, and Olivia and Ellen on the Whole Planet team who made today's event possible. So that's super fun. And then Sara, do you have a final comment or anything? I'm just blown away by your amount of knowledge and how fast you can talk and spit out numbers. Maybe you can tell them how they can follow you, or...
Oh, sure. Yes, so our website, let's see if I have it here. Nope. Anyway, it's truewealthvc.com. And if you know of anybody who's starting a company in these spaces, or you're starting a company, there's ways to get in contact with us or even apply through our website. And we really take the people who apply through our website seriously. There's a lot of venture firms that you'll hear say, oh, we only do invest in guys that we've invested with before, or, that come through us through a referral. And we're very cognizant that some women don't have the same types of relationships in the venture capital world or whatever. So we really do look at everyone who applies.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Round of applause for Sara.
Thank you.